You could save $500 every single month for the next 16 years and still have less money than someone who started 5 years after you. That's not motivational nonsense. That's math. And somewhere between your first paycheck and your last, there's a line most people never cross. Not because they're lazy, not because they don't try, but because nobody told them the truth about the first $100,000. This isn't about getting rich. It's about understanding why the game changes completely once you hit that number, and why everything before it feels like running on a treadmill that's slowly speeding up. Let's start with something uncomfortable. The average American household saves about 3.5% of their income. Sounds reasonable, right? Responsible, even. The kind of number a financial advisor nods at during a free consultation at the bank. But here's what that actually means. If you're making $60,000 a year, 3.5% is $2,100. Spread across 12 months, that's $175. Less than $6 a day. About the cost of a sandwich and a coffee. Now let's do the math nobody wants to do. At $175 a month, it would take you 47 years to save $100,000. 47 years. No interest, no inflation, no emergencies, no life. And by the time you got there, that $100,000 would buy what $30,000 buys today. So why does everyone talk about the first $100,000 like it's some magic threshold? Because it is. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's longtime partner, once said the first $100,000 is a brutal grind, but you've got to do it. He didn't say it to inspire anyone. He said it because it's true. And the reason it's true has nothing to do with discipline or willpower or cutting out lattes. It has everything to do with how compounding actually works. Most people think compound interest is some elegant force of nature like gravity or the tides. But in the early years, it's almost invisible. You save $10,000. A 7% return gives you $700. You feel nothing. Another year, another $700. You're still working, still saving, still waiting for the magic to kick in. But once you hit $100,000, that same 7% gives you $7,000. You just made $7,000 by doing absolutely nothing. You didn't work overtime. You didn't get a promotion. You didn't sell anything. The money made money. And the next year, if you add nothing, that $107,000 becomes $114,490. Then $122,504. Then $131,079. Suddenly, your money is working harder than you are. But here's the part nobody mentions. Getting to that first $100,000 requires you to do something most people are psychologically incapable of doing. You have to ignore the present. Let's talk about what that actually looks like. You're 25. You just got your first real job. You're making $50,000. After taxes, rent, student loans, car payments, groceries, and the occasional night out, you've got maybe $400 left at the end of the month. You could save it, invest it, let it sit in an index fund for the next 40 years. Or you could buy the thing you've been staring at for 3 weeks. The jacket, the vacation, the upgrade. And here's the trap. Buying the thing makes sense. You worked for that money. You deserve it. Life is short. You'll save next month. But next month, there's something else. And the month after that. And the algorithm knows this. The entire economy is designed around this. Every ad you see, every influencer you follow, every email in your inbox is built to remind you that waiting is for suckers. So you spend. And the math gets worse. Because it's not just that you didn't save the $400. It's that you spent $400 that could have been $3,000 in 20 years. You didn't buy a jacket. You sold your future self a compounding machine for the price of cotton and a logo. And you do this every month. This is why the first $100,000 is brutal. Not because the amount is hard to reach, but because reaching it requires you to live like someone who already has it, while everyone around you is living like they never will. Now let's zoom out. Let's say you actually do it. You ignore the noise. You automate your savings. You max out your Roth IRA. You put money into a boring S&P 500 index fund and don't look at it. How long does it actually take to hit $100,000? If you're saving $500 a month and averaging a 7% return, it takes about 12 years. 12 years, not 12 months, not 5 years. 12 years of choosing the same thing over and over again while watching other people take vacations, buy cars, and post about it. But here's where it gets interesting. After you hit $100,000, the next $100,000 takes about 7 years. Not 12, 7. And the third $100,000? Less than 5 years. The game doesn't get easier because you're smarter or more disciplined. It gets easier because the math flips. Your money starts doing the work you used to do. But most people never make it to year 12. Let's talk about why. In 2008, the market crashed. The S&P 500 dropped 38%. If you had $50,000 invested, you woke up one day and it was worth $31,000. $31,000. Gone. Just gone. And everyone told you the same thing. Don't panic. Stay the course. It'll come back. And it did. By 2013, the market had fully recovered. By 2020, it had more than tripled. But here's the thing nobody talks about. Most people sold in 2008. They pulled their money out at the bottom. They locked in their losses. They swore they'd never invest again. And they didn't. They missed the recovery. They missed the rebound. They missed the entire next decade. Because when you're staring at $31,000 that used to be $50,000, it doesn't feel like an opportunity. It feels like proof that the system is rigged. Hat investing is gambling. That the smart move is to get out. And emotionally, that makes perfect sense. But mathematically, it's a disaster. Because the only way compound interest works is if you leave it alone. If you let it compound. If you stop checking it every time the market dips. But we're not wired that way. We're wired to see loss as urgent and gain as slow. We're wired to protect what we have, not to wait for what we might get. And Wall Street knows this. Let's talk about who actually benefits from you not reaching $100,000. Credit card companies, for one. The average American carries about $6,000 in credit card debt. At 19% interest, that's $1,140 a year just in interest, not payments. Interest. If you paid that off and invested the $1,140 instead at 7% annual returns, you'd have an extra $54,000 in 20 years. But you won't, because the minimum payment is $120 a month, and that feels manageable. You can afford $120, so you pay it, and the balance barely moves. And 5 years later, you're still paying. The system isn't broken. It's working exactly as designed. Then there's lifestyle inflation. You get a raise, $5,000 more a year. You should be saving more, right? But now you're making $65,000 instead of $60,000, so you upgrade. Better apartment, nicer car, restaurants instead of cooking. You're not being reckless. You're just living at your income level. Except your income level isn't the finish line. It's a treadmill. And every time you step up, the treadmill speeds up with you. And then there's the big one, buying a house. Everyone tells you it's an investment. Build equity. Stop throwing money away on rent. But here's what they don't tell you. The average American spends 30% of their income on housing. If you're making $60,000, that's $18,000 a year. $1,500 a month. Now add property taxes, insurance, maintenance, HOA fees. Suddenly, you're spending $2,000 a month on a house that's appreciating at maybe 3% a year in a good market. Meanwhile, the $500 you could have been investing every month is gone, locked into drywall and a mortgage. And yes, you're building equity, but equity you can't touch without selling the house or taking out a loan. So you're asset rich and cash poor. And the first $100,000 gets further away. Here's the part that makes people uncomfortable. The first $100,000 isn't about skill. It's about saying no. No to the vacation everyone's taking. No to the car you can technically afford. No to the wedding you're expected to have. No to looking like you're doing well before you actually are. And that's nearly impossible in a world where your worth is measured by what you display. Let's say you're 28. Your friends are buying houses, leasing cars, going to Bali. You're maxing out your Roth IRA and driving a 2012 Camry. You don't look successful. You look behind, and the psychology of that is brutal, because you're not behind. You're ahead, way ahead, but nobody can see it. Not your family, not your coworkers, not the algorithm. And every day you're bombarded with proof that you're wrong. That saving is for old people. That life is happening now. That you're missing out. And maybe you are. But here's the trade. You're missing out on things that disappear. Experiences that fade. Status that evaporates the second you stop paying for it. And in exchange, you're building something that grows. Quietly, invisibly, relentlessly, until one day you wake up and you have $100,000. And your friends are still making payments. Let's talk about the people who actually make it. Not the trust fund kids. Not the crypto winners. The people who started with nothing and crossed the line. What did they do differently? They automated everything. They didn't rely on willpower. They didn't wait until the end of the month to see what was left. They set up automatic transfers the day their paycheck hit. $500, $300, whatever they could afford. Gone before they could spend it. They ignored their peers. They stopped comparing, stopped scrolling, stopped measuring their progress against people who were measuring theirs against someone else. They stayed boring. Index funds, Roth IRAs, 401k matches, no crypto, no stock tips, no get-rich-quick schemes, just the same disciplined, repetitive, unglamorous strategy for a decade. And they got comfortable being uncomfortable. They lived below their means even when they didn't have to. They said no even when they could afford to say yes. They optimized for the future even when when the present was screaming at them. And it worked, not because they were special, but because they understood something most people refuse to believe. The first $100,000 is a test, and most people fail it. Now let's talk about what happens after. Let's say you make it. 12 years of grinding, 12 years of automation, 12 years of saying no. You hit $100,000. What changes? Everything, because now your money is growing faster than you can save it. Let's say you're still contributing $500 a month. At 7% annual returns, your $100,000 becomes $107,000 by the end of year one. But you also added $6,000. So now you're at $113,000. Year two, $113,000 becomes $120,910 plus $6,000. Now you're at $126,910. Year three, $126,910 becomes $135,794 plus $6,000. You're at $141,794. You see what's happening? The growth is starting to outpace your contributions. You're not grinding anymore. You're coasting. The machine is running. And this is where people who never made it to $100,000 start to notice. Because now you're not just surviving. You're compounding. And compounding looks like magic to people who've never seen it. But here's the irony. By the time people notice, it's too late for them to catch up using the same strategy. Because the strategy only works if you start early. And they didn't. So they look for shortcuts. Crypto, meme stocks, real estate speculation, high risk, high reward plays that promise to make up for lost time. And some of them win, but most of them lose because they're trying to skip the part that can't be skipped. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The first $100,000 isn't hard because the math is complicated. It's hard because it requires you to act like a wealthy person before you have any proof that it's working. You have to delay gratification in a world that's built to deliver it instantly. You have to ignore social proof in a culture that runs on it. You have to believe in a future you can't see while everyone around you is optimizing for a present they can. And that's why most people never make it. Not because they can't, but because the cost of getting there feels higher than the reward. Until it doesn't. Until you're 40 or 50 or 60 and you look around and realize that the people who made different choices 15 years ago are living completely different lives. Not because they were smarter, not because they got lucky, but because they understood something you didn't. The first $100,000 doesn't buy you freedom. It buys you options. The option to take a year off. The option to walk away from a bad job. The option to say no without worrying about the consequences. And once you have options, everything changes. But you only get options if you're willing to give up comfort. And most people aren't, so here's where we are. You now understand why the first $100,000 is the hardest. Not because of the market, not because of interest rates, but because of you. You understand that compound interest is invisible until it isn't. That saving $500 a month for 12 years sounds absurd until you see what happens in year 13. You understand that the system is designed to keep you spending, that every algorithm, every ad, every influencer is optimized to convince you that waiting is a scam. And you understand that the people who make it aren't special. They just made a different trade. So now the question is, what trade are you willing to make? If you found this valuable, hit the subscribe button, because the next video breaks down exactly what to do with that first $100,000 once you get there. And trust me, that's where it gets interesting. Thanks for watching.